The Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privileges of the floor will kindly retire to the gallery. The senators and all in attendance will stand and be led in prayer by the Reverend Kimberly Reinholtz, Grace and Holy Trinity Episcopal Church, Richmond. Reverend Reinholtz, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Almighty God, you proclaim truth in every age by many voices. In our time, we pray for those who govern. Allow them to speak with grace and humility, to stand as witness to justice with mercy and love. Pursue understanding when discussing, writing, and proposing legislation. Embolden them with integrity so they may do their part in making Virginia a commonwealth that cares for all its people. Make their minds sound, their wills righteous, and their voices kind. In all that they undertake, I ask you to bless these leaders and allow them to speak for all the people of Virginia. Allow these, your people, to work together for the common good, which is just and fair and loving. Amen.
Amen. The clerk will please call the roll. All those present will vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Thursday, February 2nd, 2017.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of the motion will record the votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 3, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 35, noes 3, Rule 36-1. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will please report any communications from the House. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Good morning, Mr. President. I respectfully move that we waive the reading of any communications received from the House of Delegates.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 36, noes 3.
Ayes 36, noes 3. The clerk will please report any communications from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I respectfully move that the rules of the Senate be suspended and that the privileges of the floor be extended to an extraordinarily distinguished former member of this body.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the privileges of the floor granted to a distinguished person? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Mr. President, I would respectfully yield to the senator from Henrico.
Ayes 39, no 0. Thank you, Senator. The senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to introduce to everybody somebody who needs no introduction, my mentor, and it's a particularly poignant time to have him here as we close out the Senate's budget. I think he's probably so happy that he's not amongst us and wasn't here with us last night until 8 p.m. But I would like everybody to extend the warmest welcome to my friend and my predecessor, Senator Walter Stosh.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Stosh, thanks for being with us this morning, and we miss you, and we appreciate all the great work that you have done for the Commonwealth, and it's always great to see you back visiting again. I'd ask the Senate to please join me in offering Senator Walter Stosh a warm welcome. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, as I was talking with my dear friend, Senator Stosh, this morning, I was unable to persuade him to adjust his wardrobe as he was an active member of this body, but I see now that he has come over to the pink side, and I wanted to congratulate him on that.
Thank you, Senator. The time has come to welcome visitors to our gallery and take up other matters for the morning hour. The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeSteff.
Good morning, Mr. President. How are you today?
Well, thank you.
Well, today I'd like a moment to recognize a couple of young ladies who've traveled all the way from Blacksburg. One of them just so happens to be related to my seatmate. So we have Helen Gray Donovan and Kim Gibbons all the way from Virginia Tech.
Thank you, Senator. Would Helen and Kim please rise? Thank you all so much for making the trip from Blacksburg. You obviously have a great educational opportunity out there. And thanks for coming to watch your mom. She's doing a great job in the Senate. So best of wishes to you. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Helen and Kim the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise for the purposes of an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, it is with much trepidation on the part of my seatmate that I give rise to introduce a couple of his family members. Mr. President, they are joining us in the gallery. I asked that if we could extend them the warm welcome and have them stand. First is Chandler at the bright young age of 5. And we have Aubrey at the age of 11 and Colin at the age of 15. And many of y'all have seen Colin keeping Senator Stanley straight in the watchful eye while we've been here in session. And Mr. President, we also have his lovely bride, special friend, Laura. I asked if I could tell the members and those joining us in the gallery how old Laura was, and he gave me the age of 19. So he has a very young family with him here today, and we're happy that they're here to keep the senator straight for the weekend as we continue our diligent work.
Thank you, Senator. Would the wife of Senator Stanley, Laura Stanley, Chandler, Aubrey, and Colin please rise? Thank you all so much for being with us this morning, and I'm so glad you're here. Laura, I've been wanting to talk to you. We had a little bowling match last year, in which case the senator from Franklin County prevailed, and he called for a rematch this year, which I agreed to, but he went to the wrong bowling alley. That was his excuse, so I would just tell you that he is a bit directionally challenged, and on a lot of days he doesn't know whether he's going left or right. So we welcome you here, and I would ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering the beautiful family of Senator Stanley the warm welcome of the Senate. The senior senator from Bath County, Senator Deeds.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Joining us in the gallery today is a group of students from the University of Virginia Student Council Legislative Affairs Committee. They're led by a second-year Zakir Tamiz. The committee advocates before the General Assembly on behalf of the 22,000 students who attend UVA and encourage other students to participate in the political process. This past fall, this committee shuttled over 1,000 students to polling locations. They followed closely the bills before this body and the other body down the hall, and they encouraged many students to engage in the political process. Please, I'd appreciate it, Mr. President, if you'd give the warm greetings to the Senate, to Zakir Tamiz, and the delegation of UVA students who came here today.
Thank you, Senator. Would members from the UVA Student Council please rise? Thank you all for making the trip from Charlottesville to Mr. Jefferson's capital, and what a great educational opportunity you all have in Charlottesville. Our daughter, Aubrey, graduated in 2013 and just had a wonderful experience there. So we hope you're enjoying your educational experience. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering members from the UVA Student Council the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, we're delighted today, and I'd call your attention in the gallery to the presence of the Virginia Tech president, Dr. Timothy Sands, his lovely wife, Dr. Laura Sands, the athletic director, Whit Babcock, and the brand new outstanding coach, Justin Fuente. Mr. President, the Virginia Tech Hokie football team, as you know, won the Coastal Division Championship of the ACC. It went on to their 24th consecutive bowl game. That's truly extraordinary. And in a game played at the Belk Bowl in Charlotte, North Carolina, Virginia Tech Hokies beat the University of Arkansas 35-24. But if you watch the game, you might have had one or two mild heart attacks because they were down 24-0 at halftime. And then they came back with the largest comeback since 1987 to win 35-24, an extraordinarily exciting game that I'm sure most all of us, I know I watched, and I assume most everybody here watched. It was a great comeback. And appropriately, the new coach, Justin Fuente, was named ACC Coach of the Year. But not only have the football team been successful off the field, they're successful successful off the field as well as on the field because 89% of the football team graduate, which is 15 points higher than the national rate. That's something to be proud of. So, Mr. President, I hope you will give a good, warm Senate welcome to the President of Virginia Tech, Dr. Timothy Sands, his lovely wife, Dr. Laura Sands, Whit Babcock, the athletic director, and the new ACC Coach of the Year, Justin Fuente.
Thank you, Senator Wood. President Timothy Sands and wife Dr. Laura Sands, Whit Babcock, and Coach Justin Fuente, please rise. Thank you all so much for being with us this morning. And just as the senator from Roanoke City, we're so proud of Virginia Tech and what you all have done, the vision that you have done to move our Virginia's economy forward with all the innovation and research. And to you, Coach, what a great year. And we are all Hokie fans, and we really like what you're doing and appreciate all your hard work. And please send our congratulations to your team as well. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join us in offering our friends from Virginia Tech the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you. Today, I'd like to take a moment and recognize my intern, Taylor Vaughn, who has been such a tremendous help to our office over the past several weeks, both before and after session. Taylor's a junior at Randolph-Macon College, majoring in women's studies, and hopes to begin a career at a nonprofit organization upon graduation next year. We're so grateful for her to have been a part of our team. Thanks so much, Taylor. Please welcome her, Mr. President.
I will. Thank you, Senator. Would Taylor please rise? Taylor, thanks for being with us today, and thanks for all the great work that you've done. And I know you've learned a lot. I hope it's been a great experience, and we wish you the best with your education endeavors. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Taylor the warm welcome of the Senate. The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Joining us in the gallery today are a group of students from Southside Virginia Community College, and they are accompanied by their professor, Stephen Walker, who also happens to be the mayor of Charlotte Courthouse. I ask you to give them a warm welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Would Mayor Stephen Walker and members from the Southside Virginia Community College please rise? You have a great group with you this morning. Thanks for being with us, and what a great educational opportunity you all have. And as you know, we have 23 great community colleges across Virginia and really doing very well with our workforce development. So thanks for all you do. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering Mayor Stephen Walker and members from Southside Virginia Community College the warm welcome of the Senate. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator Sturdivant.
Mr. President, I rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, joining us today in the gallery here are students from the University of Richmond Law School, which I am very, very proud to represent here in the State Senate, and they are accompanied by Professor Robinson today. I hope we'd offer them the warm welcome of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator. Would members from the University of Richmond Law School please rise? And we appreciate you being with us still this morning, but what a great educational opportunity you all have. And just as an aside note, my brother, a little bit older than me, went to University of Richmond, and it has served him well in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we wish you the best, and thanks for visiting today. And as you will see, there's a tremendous amount of history here in Mr. Jefferson's capital. I'd ask the members of the Senate to please join me in offering members from the University of Richmond Law School the warm welcome of the Senate. Is there any other business for the morning hour? Seeing none, the clerk will please call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Friday, February 3rd, 2007. Uncontested calendar, Senate bill on third reading. Senate Bill 1418, a bill relating to electric utility regulation, pumped hydroelectricity generation, and storage facilities.
The senator from Russell County, Senator Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill, Senate Bill 1418 authorizes an investor-owned utility to locate one or more pump storage hydroelectric facilities in the coalfield region of the Commonwealth. Renewable energy will be used or as a portion of its power sources. The bill does declare this to be in the public interest. As you know, the coal industry in the Commonwealth of Virginia is has been down for a great long period of time. Inviting these types of facilities to the coalfield region is a means for Southwest Virginia to rebuild the investments that are being made in Southwest Virginia and to help rebuild our tax structure. A pump storage facility makes better use of intermittent power, which this General Assembly has authorized and found in the public interest. In fact, we set the goal at 500 megawatts, and we're well on track to better than achieve that goal of 500 megawatts. With that solar development and with the intermittent power that solar creates, Virginia will benefit from this storage facility to balance the system's grid and to act as a battery for the electricity that is brought online. I hope it be the pleasure of this body to pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gentlemen, yield for a question.
Would the senator from Russell yield for a question?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
And I would say I appreciate the gentleman's explanation. Does he know approximately what the cost of a new hydro facility would be?
The senator from Russell.
I am not prepared to make a guess at what the cost of this facility would be. That will be up to the State Corporation Commission to determine the prudency, Mr. President, of the construction of this facility.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City.
I would ask the gentleman, I think the one constructed...
Excuse me. Does the senator yield for an additional question?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
I would ask the gentleman, was he aware that the last facility that was constructed in Bath County was $1.6 billion, and that was in the 1980s?
The senator from Russell.
Mr. President, I would tell the gentleman that I am aware of the cost of that facility. It was built in 1985. I've toured the facility, and the facilities that we envision in the coalfield region would be substantially smaller than that facility.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City.
Further question, Mr. Speaker.
Senator, yield for an additional question. He yields, Senator.
I'd ask the gentleman, would he also be aware that the cost, of course, would the generator that built the facility would also be entitled to a return on equity, which is typically in the neighborhood of 9 or 10% for whatever capital they put in?
The senator from Russell.
Mr. President, I would tell the gentleman that I understand that the State Corporation Commission would review those matters. All those matters would be before the State Corporation Commission, and a determination would be made by that body in accordance with our statutory provisions.
The senator from Fairfax City.
Speak briefly to the member.
The senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is actually one of the bills that might be one of the more important bills for our constituents that we vote on this year because it has such a cost to us. And I'm not to say that there isn't necessarily a public purpose to this bill, and there's a lot of fine people supporting this bill, and this gentleman has explained the need for it. But understand, these facilities are billions of dollars, and that cost is spread out over often 20 to 30 years. And each year, the capital that's invested in that project is entitled to a 9 to 10% return on equity. So this is a measure that will earn hundreds of millions of dollars in profits on top of the capital investment. Now, this will be passed along to the consumers under what's called a rate adjustment clause, or a RAC, which means it's outside the base rates. So in other words, the base rate that we have quote-unquote capped, all of these new bills that we put in or projects that we have will create a rider that will go outside of that capped rates and will be passed along to the ratepayers all over the Commonwealth. Now, I don't know whether or not this is a good idea or a bad idea, but what I do know is we're not allowed to look at the base rates to know whether or not they're reasonable, yet we're going to put forward this idea as a rider that will go along with the base rate. So, again, I'm going to vote against this bill just simply because I think the system we have right now is flawed. That's not to negate what the gentleman has said, which I'm sure is very important, and the co-patrons that have sponsored this bill. But until we fix this electrical system and try and do this extempore on the floor of this body, we're going to keep adding to our customer bills without even knowing what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1418 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The bill passes.
Regular calendar Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 1128, a bill relating to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, failure to respond to requests for records, rebuttable presumption.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeSteffe.
Mr. President, can Senate Bill 1128 go by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1128 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1210, a bill relating to civil action for unlawful creation of image of another.
The junior senator from Loudoun, Senator Wexton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to that measure,
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, Senate Bill 1210 would create a civil cause of action for the offenses of unlawful creation of another, which is basically an invasion of privacy sort of thing, and unlawful dissemination of images of another, which we've colloquially come to know as revenge porn. This would let victims seek monetary damages. They could be compensatory or punitive, whether or not these offenses were charged as a crime. And if this language of this statute looks familiar to you, it's because it is. It's exactly the same remedy, civil remedy, that we already have enacted on behalf of victims of stalking. So there are nine other states in the country that already recognize a civil remedy for these offenses. What is the kind of conduct that we're talking about? Okay. Well, we are talking about intimate photographs. These are photographs of nude people. And the unlawful creation doesn't require that there be dissemination. The mere surreptitious taking of these images is enough. It's done without the consent of the victim. So an example would be, for example, a creepy guy renting a room or renting an apartment to some college co-eds in a college town and sets up a pinhole camera and films them in various states of undress and has no intention of anybody ever finding out about this. The other situation is your unlawful dissemination, where there may have been consent for the original creation of the image, but there was not consent that it be spread out out into the internet or to other viewers. In committee, some had expressed a concern that this conduct was already prohibited under the intentional infliction of emotional distress cause of action. However, and I would concede that there are instances that would be covered under that. Rarely. That would be, for example, when the image, an intimate image, is consensually made with the understanding it would just be between the two consenting adults, but then gets, for example, broadcast out to everybody's address book. You know, the ex-boyfriend gets mad and decides to send the pictures to everybody in his address book. Sure. That would probably come in under the intentional infliction of emotional distress. But the problem is vast majority of these cases wouldn't come in under those situations. It wouldn't address the issues where there was no consent for the taking of the image in the first place. And most of the people in these cases say, hey, it was just for me. I was hoping nobody would ever find out. And meanwhile, we have victims who have been violated by this behavior and aren't able to get compensation. Now, they're class 1 misdemeanors, so there's some deterrent effect there. But I guarantee you, if we start hitting these guys in their wallet, that's going to have a lot more of a deterrent effect than anything else. We talk a lot in this chamber about protecting women and about deterring bad conduct. This is a bill that lets us do both, and I would ask that the chamber please pass the measure.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Would the gentlelady answer question?
Would the junior senator yield for a question?
I will, Mr. President.
She yields, Senator.
You mentioned the intentional infliction of emotional distress, and the examples that you give, typically you're talking about somebody who is doing this for his own personal satisfaction, but he's not really doing it to intentionally inflict distress at all, is he? Isn't it true that, in fact, he's simply doing it for his personal satisfaction rather than to create and to inflict distress on the victim?
The junior senator from Loudoun.
Mr. President, I would respond to the senior senator from Loudoun to say, yes, that is exactly why most of these individuals say that they are doing what they're doing.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1210 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no other senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? If any senators desire to change their votes, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 4.
Ayes 35, noes 4. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 806, a bill relating to the Interstate 73 Corridor Development Fund and Program.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you and good morning, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 806 pass, and speaking to that measure, sir.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think members of this body have heard from me a lot about the Interstate 73 project, the corridor that runs from the North Carolina border through Southside Virginia, through the Roanoke Valley, and on to West Virginia. And that when we build this very important road that the federal government has identified as a high priority corridor, it will bring to my region 48,000 to 53,000 permanent jobs. And the cost that the state and federal grant money will put into it will pay for itself in 10 years from the revenue that's generated from those jobs and the businesses that will come there. It will connect Southside Virginia to the deepwater ports in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. It will connect Southside Virginia to the global marketplace, and it will provide hope to an area that once before was the economic driver of Virginia with textile, tobacco, manufacturing, and coal. It is the one thing that we need in terms of infrastructure that is going to be the game changer for our future and for our children's future. Right now, too often, because we have one of the highest unemployment rates, one of the highest poverty rates, Mr. President, 1 out of 3 people who live, 1 out of 3 children who live in my area live at or below the poverty level. That means they don't even have a chance at the American dream or a chance at even achieving a college education, because our average income, where the state income is $63,000, is $28,600 for a family of 4. It is startling that once we had the lowest unemployment, highest graduation rates, highest rates for income per capita, and now that has changed. But I-73 will change the future and the future of those children. Because right now, Mr. President, when we have our children and we grow them and they grow up, they have to leave to go find a job. What we're trying to do, and this is one of the great pieces of that puzzle, is to make sure that when our children grow up, that when we go visit them, we're not visiting them across the state, but rather we're visiting them across the street. And so this bill basically takes the Route 58 Corridor Fund, and when it is completed 20 years from now, will be used and transformed into the I-73 Corridor Development Fund. This does not circumvent Smart Scale, HB2, does none of that. But it will help in the obtaining not only of federal funds and repayment of bonds, but more importantly, it will be the psychological shot in the arm my area needs. I ask you to pass this very important bill for Southside and Southwest Virginia, and I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 806 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 13.
Ayes 26, noes 13. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 959, a bill relating to the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, responsibility of tenant, abandoned animals, penalty.
The senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this bill first came about that when a tenant leaves an apartment or a home that's owned by someone else, and they leave the animals in there. So what I did, I put the bill in to say that whoever owned the apartment and the home, that they would be responsible. So then the home realtors and the home builders came to me and saying that it should be the person who owns the animal. Say anybody who owns an animal, they should know very well that when they leave that apartment, that house, that's their animal. It's an animal. It's a house pet. So what they did, according to the already present code and the fine, they used that and they put the burden on the person who owns the animal. So I move this bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 959 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 991, a bill relating to residential rental property.
The senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
This bill came from the Virginia Association of Realtors, and it's a result of the stakeholders coming together and working out language to place in statute the common law rule that after a foreclosure, the lease is terminated but continues on a month-to-month basis until one of the parties terminates the lease. This makes sure that the tenant, the new owner, and any property manager have a smoother transition after a foreclosure. The realtors, the Poverty Law Center, and a group of stakeholders have reached consensus on this bill, and there was no opposition presented in committee, and I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 991 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? If any senators desire to change their votes, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1013, a bill relating to host localities economic development incentive fund and host localities transportation support fund.
The senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senate Bill 1013 creates the Host Cities Economic Development Incentive Fund, which will be administered by the Secretary of Commerce and Trade to support economic development, growth of existing businesses, and job creation related to the ports of Virginia and one or more host cities. It also creates the Host Cities Transportation Support Fund, administered also by the Secretary of Transportation, to support transportation projects and facilities related to the ports of Virginia and one or more host cities. And, Mr. President, with that explanation, I move again that the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1013 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 28, noes 11.
Ayes 28, noes 11. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1110, a bill relating to State Corporation Commission approval of utility facilities.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you again, Mr. President. I rise to speak in support and move its passage of Senate Bill 1110. And speaking to that more.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 1110 has garnered some concern out in Virginia. And I think that concern is not well taken and mistaken. Senate Bill 1110 comes from trying to clean up what it was my bill in 2012. Mr. President, members of this body, in 2012, we were having a problem in our area in Southside Virginia because we were building these mega parks, industrial parks, and trying to bring in prospects, corporations to come and relocate in our area and then have them build their facility there at the park. The problem was that bringing the electricity to that park, naturally APCO, who is our service provider, Appalachian Power Company, would not bring that line unless we had a contract. And if we had a contract then, to get that line approved, those transmission lines and the transfer stations, you had to come back up here to Richmond and go to the SCC, the State Corporation Commission. And that would take 11 to 14 months. And by that time, I tell you, Mr. President, most of the times, even considering that, those companies were going to North Carolina, where the approval process was more streamlined. So in 2012, I put a bill together, and it passed unanimously out of this body and the body across the hall, that allowed the localities, the local governments, to work with AEP, APCO, not Dominion, APCO, to put these transmission lines in what they call 138 kV lines. It's the only kind of lines we use down there. They're rarely used anywhere else. APCO is the main provider of that. To bring those lines in by going and seeking approval for the placement and the construction with the local government. It was working out great. It's working out in Commonwealth Crossing. You know, we're working with the locality. The locality's working with APCO to make sure this happens in a quick manner. It shortened it from 14 months to 5 to 6 months, allowing us to be more competitive in bringing these jobs back to Southside Virginia. The problem with it is when we wrote the bill, I wrote the bill and it said transmission line, didn't say transfer station or anything else. Well, a case that went before the Supreme Court said that, as it should have been, that words are taken for their literal meaning and you don't add to them, you don't take away from them. And because it did not have the language transfer station in there, that only the locality could approve the line of transmission, but not the transfer station, causing APCO to have to go back to the State Corporation Commission, which defeated the whole purpose of the bill. Because if they were going to have to go back to the State Corporation Commission, we're back to the 11, 14 months to get everything approved. So this bill adds transfer station in there. And it does not take away local control. In fact, it enhances local government control of this process, Mr. President, and here's why. Right now, as the law stands, when you go to the State Corporation Commission to get approval of these lines, the zoning is presumed and subsumed, and taken away. It's all of that. The local has no authority. The local government has absolutely no authority. This bill does subsume that in that as well, but it allows the locality 100% involvement in the approval process rather than having it done by a state body known as the State Corporation Commission. So this doesn't take away local powers. It enhances them. It speeds up the process in our area specifically. It has nothing to do with Prince William County, as I've heard over and over from people who have contacted my office. Nothing. Let me say that one more time, Mr. President. Nothing to do with Prince William County or Dominion or anything else. This is a bill for Southside and Southwest so that we can make local control for the transmission of these lines, the construction of these transmission lines and the stations at our mega parks and industrial parks. And that's the bill, Mr. President. And for those reasons, I renew my motion that Senate Bill 1110 pass.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Mr. President, I rise to speak in support of the bill. I think the gentleman has stated it exactly correctly. This was a unique situation with the 138 kilovolt lines, which are unique to the APCO service area. And I do remember the 2012 legislation. So while I'm hardly here at the behest of the power companies, I think in this case the bill makes sense. So I hope we support it.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1110 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes. Aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 30, noes 10.
Ayes 30, noes 10. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1123, A bill relating to the Manufactured Home Lot Rental Act, notice of uncorrected violations.
Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass, and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Senate Bill 1123 provides a framework to allow notice to be provided for those that are living in our mobile or manufactured home parks in Virginia. I had a situation in my district, which actually in about 30 days we have folks that will be evicted. 50 families will lose their homes because they weren't aware that the underlying sanitary lines that fed their trailers were in fact being damaged year over year. And this provides a framework where if there's a local inspection and that inspection identifies issues, those tenants, those people who have mortgages on their units will be notified that there's an underlying issue that helps to serve their unit. This is an important, I hope to prevent. I can't help the current residents, but I hope to prevent and help someone in other districts around the Commonwealth to make sure they're notified so they can take some corrective actions and ask the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1123 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? If any senators desire to change their votes, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. The bill passes.
Returning to Senate Bill 1110, as several people have pointed out to me, I wrote down 9, but I said 10, so my apologies. And he's not paying any attention. Senate Bill 1198, a bill relating to operations of emergency vehicles, emergency vehicle operators control.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeSteff.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass. Speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
What this bill does is it provides for anyone driving a fire truck or an ambulance the requirement to go to the EVOC course, Emergency Vehicle Operations course, or equivalent training. The other thing it allows is it allows for counties, cities, towns to, because they've gone to the EVOC course, it allows for lower insurance or a lower portion on their risk management accounts, so they don't have to set aside so much. And with that, Mr. President, I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1198 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 30, noes 9.
Ayes 30, noes 9. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1226, a bill relating to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Public Procurement Act, Proprietary Records, and Trade Secrets Solar Energy Agreements.
The senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Bill 1226 pass. And by way of explanation, Mr. President,
Senator has the floor.
This bill would enable localities to enter into solar services agreements with third parties and allow the agreement to maintain as confidential and under the Freedom of Information Act certain proprietary information. There's a process to do this. It would have to be as authorized in the existing Freedom of Information Act. Financial terms of the agreement would also have to be disclosed, however. It would not allow that to be maintained as confidential. So with that explanation, Mr. President, and stating that I think this would enable a lot of localities to do what they would like to do, enter into solar services agreements, I move again that the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1226 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 5.
Ayes 35, noes 5. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1264, a bill relating to the Virginia Telephone Privacy Protection Act, telephone solicitation calls.
The senior senator from Loudoun County, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. Moving passage and speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 1264 simply updates the Virginia Telephone Privacy Protection Act. Over time, what has happened is sellers who had previously been complying with the Privacy Act have begun to use third-party agents who bypass the do not call list and provisions of that sort, and they make calls without identifying themselves and so forth, and that has become a problem. So what it does is essentially it uses the agency, the principle of agency, to hold liable the seller for acts by these employees who are calling often from offshore. And we do have provisions that say that so long as the offshore organization follows the guidance of the seller, that there will not be a problem. So anyway, with that, I urge that you pass the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Would the senior senator from Loudoun yield for a question?
Would the senior senator yield for a question? He yields, Senator.
Thank you. I do commend him for bringing the bill, as I hate these horrible calls as much as the next person, but had a practical question. It applies to Virginia residents, and I was wondering, don't many Virginia residents have area codes that are associated on their cell phones with areas that are originated outside of Virginia? In other words, could I have a non-Virginia area code on my cell phone?
The senior senator from Loudoun County.
I'd respond by saying that these incoming calls typically have no identifying information whatsoever. I have some hard lines that you'll typically get an identification that'll say Susan B. And you answer, there's no identification whatsoever of it. And that really is the source of the problem. Previously, where you had the caller identified, then you had somebody that you could go after. And so you have this process of skirting going on where you have sellers of products who are saying, okay, I can bypass what Virginia's trying to do. I'll hire some company that just simply blows off the law and there's no comeback. And so that's what we're trying to get at.
Would the gentleman yield for another question?
The senator yield for an additional question.
I would.
He yields, Senator.
I thank him for describing the bill. I understand it better. But don't many Virginians, because the bill applies to persons who live in Virginia, if they move from elsewhere, might they have an area code from Illinois or North Carolina or somewhere else living in Virginia? And how would on a practical basis, how would we enforce that, or how would the person who's calling these call centers or whoever know who in our state they shouldn't be calling who they should?
The senior senator.
I respond by saying that what this does is it says if you do not have that information, that you're not limited to simply going after the individual who calls, whether they're calling from within Virginia, from another state, or from outside of the country. What it does is it applies principles of agency, and it says you can go after the seller. So if you have an individual who is selling new roofs, and they have a company, and they hire the company, and this company hounds everybody under creation and says, we can sell you a great roof, sign up, and people are on the do not call list, and they've said, don't call us. You're not limited any longer to going after the person who calls, but the company itself that's selling the roofs. So you have the ability there, and it's under the principle of agency.
Thank you, Senator.
Speak very briefly to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Again, I want to thank the gentleman for bringing the bill and for describing it. I understand the intent of the bill. I'm going to vote for it, but I wanted to suggest that it might need some tinkering at the other end of the hall, because it says the person who's called has to be a Virginia resident, I believe it says. And I'm just pointing out that it's hard to know in this day of cell phones when you're calling a number whether you're in Virginia or not, because you could call any U.S. area code, or even, I suppose, an overseas one, and reach a resident of Virginia if they've moved after they obtain that cell phone number. So I just hope that he'll look carefully at that. And with that, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1264 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1265, a bill relating to Department of General Services, maintenance of property records, certification when lease, notification when lease or other agreement to terminate. Report.
The senator from Russell County, Senator Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass.
Senator has the floor.
Speaking to the bill, I believe that each of the members of the General Assembly should be given notice when a state agency moves out of an office within the district or moves to another office or changes addresses or locations. That's all this bill does. It provides notice to us on a quarterly basis of state agency offices that move around or that move from one district to the other, and it gives us 90 days advance notice of any change in any intention to change for that state agency.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1265 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1282, a bill relating to wireless communications infrastructure.
The senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass, and speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the body, this bill has to do with where we have access to wireless service in Virginia. And I'll tell you a story that I think many of y'all might be have experienced yourself. On Saturday morning last week, my little girl, Reagan, decided she wanted to go with us on errands. So we all popped into the car to drive down the interstate to go do those. When we popped in the car had GPS. I had my cell phone, which is a smartphone. My wife had her cell phone, which is a smartphone. And my little girl wanted to have her Netflix streaming as we went down the road. Well, Mr. President, when we started with technology on cell phone and infrastructure, we didn't need that much ability to have information. There was nobody streaming movies as you were driving down the road. There was no navigation and GPS that was going on continuously. And Mr. President, that need for wireless data has created a challenge and a problem. Our infrastructure for data is now it's going to increase six-fold in 5 years. So from 2015 to 2020, in just 5 years, the data traveling through that infrastructure is going to increase 6 times. That's just absolutely remarkable. But, Mr. President, I think Virginia needs to continue to, Virginians and Virginia needs to continue to be at the forefront of making sure that our constituents, our family members in the urban areas and in the rural areas continue to have access to that data and that information, because as we know, it's vital to success in business and communication with our families. And we want to have the ability to make available new technology, new speeds that will be coming through the next generation of 5G. Mr. President, in order to ensure that all that information and access can be made throughout the Commonwealth, we need to beef up our infrastructure. And with this bill, we've created a statewide approach to making sure that infrastructure can be in place. And I'll tell you, Mr. President, this bill has been worked on for the last year and a half. There are some changes yet to be made, some negotiations that are currently going on that I think will make Virginia the leader and make sure that my little girl can access her Netflix as she goes down the road. Because I will tell you, my life is substantially better because she can do that as we're driving from place to place. And I am confident I am not the only parent who has a child that needs to ensure that they are happy as we're moving down through the roads of the Commonwealth. So with that, Mr. President, I renew my motion that the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, will the gentleman from Hanover yield for a question?
Would the senator from Hanover yield?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
First, I'd say to the gentleman, my 3 daughters also have a high demand and need of streaming of Netflix. And at first, when I saw this, I was very interested in 5G and the new technologies, especially the repeater sites. And so the question to the gentleman would be, does this bill prohibit and ban localities from entering in leases on their own existing structures that they've paid taxes on in the right-of-way?
The senator from Hanover.
Mr. President, and I will tell the gentleman as we move through the process, there are still some elements to be negotiated, but I will tell the gentleman that as the bill is working through the process now, a locality cannot, if there's an existing structure and it's in place and it's used for other communication services, then those small cell devices, as their terms, ones that are 1 foot to approximately 3 foot in diameter, can be placed on top of those. Mr. President, I also tell the gentleman that there is a permitting process, but what it does not allow, that a fee can be charged for, but I will tell the gentleman what it does not allow a locality to do is treat this telecommunication dissimilarly than it treats other utilities like water and sewer and power.
The senator from Prince William, Senator McPike.
Follow-up question.
Would the gentleman yield for an additional question?
Yield.
He yields, Senator.
Would the senator agree that as our girls are traveling down the roads and streaming Netflix and watching their favorite shows or movies, that there's also need for public infrastructure, public safety infrastructure on these existing? Is it true that this bill also prohibits co-location of our public safety infrastructure on these same similar sites?
The senator from Hanover.
I would answer the gentleman that I do not believe the language in the bill prohibits that, but it doesn't require or allow localities to block this type of infrastructure unless they co-locate devices.
The senator from Prince William County.
Mr. President, speaking against the measure.
The senator has the floor.
I appreciate the gentleman from Hanover's bill and efforts. As I indicated, I was excited about seeing a bill on 5G and the efforts. And as I was excited and started to read the bill, my excitement quickly waned for a number of reasons. One of which being that this takes away the localities from decisions on actual leases of essentially property rights as a public paying entity, or as our taxpayers and local government had paid to build out this infrastructure for those who control the right-of-ways in some cities and localities. And then from those who do not, who have VDOT right-of-ways within those, our taxes have also gone in to pay for this infrastructure. It does, in fact, as currently written, prohibit the request of co-location of public safety infrastructure when we're building out these networks. These are important partnerships we're building when we do these networks. This should be a part of this. This is currently not. We're providing a huge giveaway currently in this current construct. Point 2 on this, it also requires access to public parks that are not in the right-of-way. So now we expand it from right-of-ways to other places. Number 3, it essentially provides no framework of franchise. We have franchise agreements in local governments which have agreements in partnership with our utility providers. And I'll bring up several important facets. In education and health, we struggle with the fact of how we increase data access to lower income kids. We're now requiring our school and classrooms to be online. We're requiring additional education to be done there, yet we have not solved how we get access. Yet there's nothing in this bill that addresses one of our longest struggling public policy issues as we increase internet access. Yet this does nothing to that effect. And the third point, the fiscal impact statement would cost City of Lynchburg $100,000, $250,000. It goes on. And why? Why is this? Number one, it's a loss of fees. Okay? This has a limit on the number of fees generated. Number two, a lot of localities already have existing cell site leases that generate hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what occurs when this legislation goes into place? All those private lease entered in with the local government and the cell providers is gone. What does that mean? It's going to raise your taxes in your local government. All right? All of your taxpayers are going to be increased. Your taxpayers are going to have to pay more because of this legislation. There are a lot of hidden things in here. There's a good framework. I think there needs to be a larger statewide framework, but as currently written, this bill has a significant impact, and the public giveaway on this is tremendous without a public benefit received back. I've got a real problem with that when we're trading these sort of trade-offs in this discussion, and therefore, Mr. President, I ask that the body vote against this measure.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surabel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman from Hanover yield for a question?
Would the senator from Hanover yield for a question?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
I said two really quick questions, and I read the text that I couldn't quite get an answer to. One was, there's a big move in the region of Northern Virginia I represent to underground utilities all along Route 1 to try and improve the way it looks and feels, and also in a lot of areas where they have more of a lot more transit usage. We're trying to get all our utilities underground. And I know there was a concern expressed to me early on in this process that this bill might allow utility providers in the future to sort of undo that and start placing lots of repeater towers or little poles or whatever back above ground after we'd already spent a lot of money burying everything. I was just curious if the gentleman could describe for me exactly what this legislation might enable or not enable or prohibit with regard to underground utilities, given that we have to have these things above ground.
The senator from Hanover.
Mr. President, I would answer the gentleman to the best of my ability. The vast majority of this bill deals with small cell technology, what it's referred to. And these are, in essence, repeater-type boxes to make sure that between the towers, data can move smoothly and at a faster rate and in a higher volume. Those are traditionally placed on existing structures, which could be a existing telephone pole, but it could be a building or some other type of structure. And those devices that are placed there are traditionally very small, 1 to 3 foot in size. So, Mr. President, I don't think that there's anything in the language of the bill as it's currently before you that if some line is undergrounded would require it to be then reestablished on a pole. Mr. President, I would also answer, and I don't know that this is specifically this gentleman's question, but in reference to co-locating items, the way the language currently is, there's nothing that prohibits the working or accepting working with a locality for the co-locating of devices.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Will the gentleman yield for an additional question?
The senator yield for
I'd yield.
He yields, Senator.
And I appreciate the gentleman's answer. I would just ask that as this process goes on that the gentleman strive to ensure that the legislation not allow telecommunications providers to place poles with repeater boxes on them where we've already undergrounded utilities by right, because that was, I think, was the concern. The second question I had was, I think the gentleman's aware, one of my passions has been trying to expand the use of more broadband in the state, especially in our underserved areas, our rural areas. As we try to, if we get more computers in our schools, access to data and information at home is a big problem. And whenever we pass legislation like this, I always see it as an opportunity to try to encourage utility providers to expand broadband in our rural areas. Back in the 1940s with electricity and before that with telephones, when things were more highly regulated, the government forced these providers to extend service to rural areas. But we haven't done that lately, which is why we don't have a lot of broadband. And so I was curious whether there's any provisions in this bill that would force sort of more service to the last mile, to our more rural, isolated areas in the states, so that everybody can enjoy the same broadband access that we have in the more densely populated parts of Virginia.
Senator from Hanover.
Mr. President, I would tell the gentleman, I think the way that the language currently is, it does address his concerns. The focus of the legislation is more on the placing these small cell devices on existing structures. The language in the bill that deals with new structures really is about timeframes for when those applications have to be reviewed. I don't think we do a lot to change what that process is or that determination is, but it's just timeframes of when that has to be reviewed. And I tell the gentleman, even though the bill does not have a specific provision requiring companies to take data access to individual places of the Commonwealth, what this does do is overall change the structure of how we're doing the system and makes it more cost effective for that information to go out farther. So I'll tell the gentleman, in many of the areas that I represent, we don't have access to 4G technology, which we do here at the Capitol and in many of the metropolitan areas of the Commonwealth. Even if you're in some of those areas, you might have a difficulty getting access to it as the volume increases on a given day or number of users that are on it. So I do think that this is going to allow that type of access to get out to the rural areas faster, help my constituents, and certainly as Reagan travels with me to the Northern Neck and Mr. President, area you used to represent over on the Middle Peninsula, access for her to get those NetShow flicks a little bit faster than what she's able to now, and she doesn't have to wait for the buffering, which really annoys her.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
I thank the gentleman.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, just very quickly, before I came here, I served on Fairfax City Council, and one of the things we did was we would negotiate franchise agreements, for example, with the cable company, and we would allow them to use our right-of-way, but in response, we would get a benefit for our citizens. For example, we installed a TV station at Fairfax High School. We had programs to make the cable available to certain city residents, and we would negotiate and get something back in return. And the problem is, I look at this bill, I don't see what we're negotiating. I mean, we're telling a for-profit industry, we're going to allow you to basically supersede all the local zoning regulations, but what are we getting back in return? You know, there's been a comparison made to water, power, and sewer. Well, we require the electric companies to hook up to every user. We put requirements on them, okay? And this is a for-profit business. We're not requiring anything from them other than to make their beautiful product available to the world. Well, they get paid to do that. So I think this bill needs a lot of work, and the only way it's going to get a lot of work is if we put some red lights on it. So I hope some people will oppose this bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1282 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 17, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 21, noes 17, Rule 36-1. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1341, a bill relating to the digital certification of government records.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass and speaking to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
This is a simple little bill. It basically just a lot of the federal government and other state governments around the country are starting to provide digital certification of public records. Right now in Virginia, you can only certify a public record with a wet pen and ink signature. This requires the Secretary of the Commonwealth to create a process by which we have digital certification. It's a pretty simple little bill, Mr. President. I would hope the body would pass it.
Thank you, Senator. The junior senator from Loudoun, Senator Wexton.
Mr. President, having voted on the prevailing side by which we passed Senate Bill 1282, I would ask that we reconsider that vote.
Senator, if you could, I'll come back to you. Let me just get through this bill first.
Thank you. Sorry.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 1341 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bill passes. The junior senator from Loudoun, Senator Wexton.
At this time, Mr. President, I would ask, having voted on the prevailing side by which we passed SB 1282, I would ask that we reconsider that vote.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 1282 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 38, no 0, Rule 36-1. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Hanover.
Mr. President, having previously been explained and for all our children, I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1282 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 21, noes 18, Rule 36-1. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1360, a bill relating to the Department of Military Affairs civil actions.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move passes the bill, and speaking briefly to it.
The senator has the floor.
Members of the chamber, this is a bill that came at the request of the Department of Military Affairs. And currently, under Virginia law, the Department of Military Affairs receives about $3 million a year of general funds through the Appropriation Act for tuition for members of the Virginia National Guard. Some of those members of our National Guard don't pass their classes. They fell out of school. They've taken this money in good faith to do good things, but they haven't fulfilled their contractual agreements. And so the Department of Military Affairs is asking that we allow them the opportunity to try to recover some of those so we can give them to other soldiers. Currently, the Office of the Attorney General handles anything above about $2,999, but the Department of Veterans Affairs is asking that they be allowed the authority to actually represent themselves in small claims court to try to recover some of these monies so we can get them back to the people who really need them so they can go to college. Mr. President, that's the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1360 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1393, a bill relating to electric utility regulations pilot programs for community solar development.
The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask the bill pass and speaking to the measure.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, what Senate Bill 1393 does is establish for the first time a series of community solar pilot programs. These are smaller scale solar projects. It involves both of our investor owned utilities, Dominion and Appalachian Power. Each have some requirements. These projects can be no more than 2 megawatts each. The minimum that Allegheny would be required to provide is up to 4 megawatts. In other words, 2 of these with a maximum of 10 or 5 of these community solar projects. Dominion, the other investor-owned utility, would have to provide a minimum of 25 megawatts of power, or some 12 and a half of these projects, all the way up to 40 megawatts. And what this does, Mr. President, is attempt to put more solar out there in a community setting in a smaller scale solar projects to see how these things work within the community. They come with a voluntary rate schedule for those people that would like to hook up to this power and get that power. It does provide provisions, if we find it successful, to actually expand beyond the 2 megawatt limit. With permission of the State Corporation Commission. So, Mr. President, it's felt like this is an excellent way to integrate solar and more of a voluntary with these community solar projects, and I hope it will be the pleasure of the Senate to pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1393 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 39, no 0, Rule 36-1. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1394, a bill relating to small agricultural generators, sale of electric power, net metering.
The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the bill pass and speaking to that measure.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, Senate Bill 1394 provides for a net metering program for small ag producers using solar power on their farms to actually produce and then sell back to the investor-owned utilities the excess power they produce. It's a small, limited pilot program meant to again, evaluate that, but it gives an opportunity for those in the agricultural business to actually start their own new source of income for their farms in terms of providing solar power and selling it back to the grid. And with that explanation, Mr. President, I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1394 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? If any senators desire to change their votes, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 3, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 36, noes 3, Rule 36-1. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1428, a bill relating to education improvements, scholarships, tax credits, eligibility requirements.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that Senate Bill 1428 pass. And speaking to my motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. Senate Bill 1428 is a simple bill that makes some expansions on the education improvement scholarship tax credit that we currently have in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which allows children that are 100% to 300% above, all the way down to the poverty level and below, to attend private schools by use of scholarships. Those persons and corporations that donate to these scholarship funds receive a 65% tax credit. It's allowed thousands of children who otherwise may not have had that opportunity, and those parents to make those decisions to attend the school of their choice. And it has been a rousing success. Well, this, Mr. President, expands the Education Improvement Scholarship Tax Credit Program by modifying the definition of an eligible student to be also a student with a disability. So therefore, more children with disabilities would be eligible to receive the tax credit-derived scholarships from those foundations. It reduces the penalty if the foundation does not take the scholarship money and immediately within that first year or the year that it received it, give it in the form of a scholarship, the penalty from 200% to 100% of that amount. And it also, in my amendment, eliminates that the scholarship amount available for the eligible child with a disability would be 100%, not 400%. Mr. President, the saving, a lot of our public schools are not equipped, unfortunately because of the limitations of their budget, to handle children with disabilities. And this enables those parents to find those schools that can take care of their children who suffer from these disabilities. And it has been even said from a very good senator who once was in these seats, the former senator from Chesterfield, Senator Stosh, who said to me, he said this would allow public schools to actually save money through this scholarship program because parents are now encouraged to remove their disabled child from public school because the cost of educating disabled students in Virginia through the public school system is 4 times the state share of SOQ. So for those reasons, it's a very beneficial program for both the student and the parent, and also those school systems that are dealing with limited funds. So for those reasons, Mr. President, I renew my motion that Senate Bill 1428 pass.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator from Franklin County rise for a question?
Would the senator yield?
Gladly.
He yields, Senator.
Thank you. I'm just curious, is there a fiscal impact statement with this, since you're broadening the eligibility for students who would be eligible to accept the scholarships, and therefore the tax credit number I would expect would go up, or do you not know?
The senator from Franklin County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd answer the gentle lady by saying, actually, I do know. What we've had as the top scholarship amount, the total amount of tax credits that are given to individuals or corporations that give to these scholarship programs is $25 million. What we're trying to increase is the pool of eligibility. It would not increase anything on our budget that is not already budgeted for. So what it's trying to do is expand the pool of eligible students to include those with disabilities, and it won't change the dollar amount one way or the other right now.
Thank you, Senator.
I thank the senator.
Thank you. The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly appreciate the gentleman from Franklin's intent here to help young kids. I just wanted to remind the body that very often education costs don't attach to a child. They attach to the infrastructure of the facility or the cost center that is educating them. Taking one child out of that program, the teacher's still there, the lights are still on, the principal's still there, the school bus drivers, the cooks, everybody. That's where the cost is from, not with the individual student. And just wanted to remind the body that that's the way this kind of financing works. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1428 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 17.
Ayes 23, noes 17. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1431, a bill relating to the Administrative Process Act, Economic Impact Analysis, opportunity for comment by affected businesses or other entities.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking of the bill,
The senator
I
has
ask for its passage.
Yes, sir. The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this is a good government bill, and I wish to lend my remarks to thank the senator from Southern Fairfax for helping with this legislation. What it does is it requires, when the Department of Planning and Budget does their economic impact analysis for any regulations they're trying to put out there, it's just requiring them to take the input for public comments that otherwise they weren't taking before, so those comments can help retrack or recalibrate the impact analysis of what that economic outlook looks like. That's what this legislation is designed to do. It's supported by numerous Chamber of Commerce and the NVTC and a bunch of other folks. But really, if we pass this bill, it'll ensure the economic impact of any proposed regulations can be comprehensively understood before those regulations are enacted. That's the bill, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1431 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 2.
Ayes 37, noes 2. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1456.
Mr. President?
The senator from...
Never mind.
Thank you, Senator.
Senate Bill 1456, a bill relating to the motor vehicle fuel sales tax in certain transportation districts price floor.
The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to that measure.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, 3 years ago we passed some historic transportation legislation in its body and ultimately signed by then Governor McDonald that for the first time addressed our critical funding for transportation needs throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. This measure actually raised a new $1 billion with a B for transportation projects statewide, and also established a regional account for our regions to recognize that there are regions of the state, mine and Hampton Roads, as well as Northern Virginia, that needs additional money but wouldn't fit into the pattern of actually raising taxes around the state because the needs of the rest of the state were not as great as the needs in our particular two regions. So in the course of doing that, we established these two regions. Well, they had been previously established, but provided them additional funding. One of the shifts that was made during that whole dissertation on House Bill 2313 was the move away from a per-gallon tax to a sales tax on the cost of gasoline. When you move from a per-gallon tax to a sales tax, one of the risks that you run into is, what if the price of gasoline goes down? Then you actually get less revenue than you anticipated. Now, at the time the bill was debated, it happened that the gasoline prices were some of the highest, or as the senior senator from Fairfax tells us the day before, was the highest that we had ever seen. In the course of those discussions, that subject came up, and it was negotiated into the bill that we would put a floor in at that particular spot sales price of gasoline for that particular day, which happened to be very fortuitous if you think we have enough money for transportation and need those fundings. In the course of doing those negotiations and finally settling on it, we omitted to remember the regional areas. Had we remembered at that point, I'm quite certain in the negotiations that they would have said, sure, go ahead and let's do the regional taxes. Well, as we all know, from that day that we had some few years ago in February, what has actually happened is the price of gasoline has plummeted to the benefit of every consumer in this room and indeed every citizen of the Commonwealth of Virginia, a real drop in the cost of gasoline, which has put literally hundreds of millions of dollars back into the taxpayers' pockets in Virginia. Had we not been so fortuitous as to remember to put the floor in, these transportation projects you see going around in Virginia today would not be going on. Certainly, probably the vast majority would not even be occurring right now because there would not be the revenue in there had we not put the floor in. Well, I can assure you the same things have happened in our regions. And I will yield the floor in a minute to the senator from the city of Fairfax. But let me tell you a little bit about what's happened here in Hampton Roads. We have seen a precipitous drop in the revenue collections. Many of the projects that we're looking at right now are going to be required to be tolled. And as these revenues drop, the available money we have to actually get these construction projects accomplished is going down. And the corollary to that is the less money we have to actually get the road built, the more money we'll have to borrow to complete the project. Translation, the less money we have today, the more the tolls will be. Now, let me tell you what happens once you decide to go up with a toll. When you go up with a toll, you now have the care and feeding of the toll system. You also have to go out on the credit market and borrow those monies, which means that for everything that we decide to toll, we're going to take $2 out of the taxpayer's pocket instead of the $1 if we just decided to build the road and pay as you go. Because we're borrowing, we'll now take another $1 out of the taxpayer's pocket to pay Wall Street for the cost of the bonds to go ahead and float, and also the care and feeding of the toll system. I don't know how you feel, but if I have the opportunity to take $2 out of the taxpayer's pocket or $1 on critically needed infrastructure projects, I'm of the ilk that I want to take $1 out of the taxpayer's pocket and not $2. Okay? And don't kid yourself, and don't fool yourself, and don't try to convince yourself it's anything other than that, because that's what it is. I had the opportunity to speak up in Loudoun County earlier this week. And that exact subject came up, and I said, look what happens when you don't come up with the money to actually have the highway built. And I know it's a very sensitive issue, and I can appreciate the sensitivity of the issue for those folks that live in Loudoun County with the tolls that they have to pay every day for just for the privilege of driving back and forth to downtown D.C. and those types of things. So these decisions we make here today impact not just us and our taxpayers and the money that come out of their pocket, but impacts their children. And the way these bonds go will impact their grandchildren and take $2 out of the pocket. I thank God that our parents made that decision to put a federal fuels tax into place under Republican President Dwight David Eisenhower to build an interstate highway system. Because had they not made that investment on the part of each and every one of us in this room, had they not made that investment, where would we be today? Where would commerce be today had they not made that investment? Look at the return on investment that we reap today because our parents had the foresight to make that investment today. So it's kind of a glorious speech for asking you to raise the floor in my area, in an area that Northern Virginia that desperately needs it. Because right now, every dollar we don't raise means that the citizens, I live in Hampton Roads, and in fact, if you don't have a dog in this hunt, you're not in Hampton Roads, or you're not in Northern Virginia. When you come and visit our area, you're now going to take $2 out of your taxpayer's pocket to come visit our area instead of having us build the road for you and you could use it for free. So those are the decisions that we're making today, and I would hope that you would allow something that we really have a consensus build from the legislators in our area, the businesses in our area, and indeed the majority constituents in our area, and allow us to at least put the floor back in. And that's what the bill does. All it does is establish that statewide floor that we used currently today across the board and add that to both the Hampton Roads region as well as Northern Virginia. And, Mr. President, I'll yield the floor to the senator from the city of Fairfax.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speak to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
And I want to associate with my colleague from Virginia Beach. He's exactly correct. His bill rolled in my Senate Bill 1092, which does for Northern Virginia what his does for the Hampton Roads area. Basically, it takes the 2.1% add-on fuels tax that right now goes to mass transit in Northern Virginia and pegs that to the price that we had at the pump in 2013. When gas prices went south in the last couple of years, our revenues dried up and our mass transit suffered for it. I mean, you already know about the problems with Metro, and this isn't going to solve that as a silver bullet. But trust me, we need to hold that harmless. Otherwise, it's going to have a huge impact on our area and on the mass transit. And so without reiterating everything he said, I fully agree with him, and I ask that it is huge. I ask that we vote for the bill.
Thank you, Senator. The senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senior senator from Virginia Beach yield for a question?
Would the senior senator yield for a question?
I yield.
He yields, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask the gentleman, what is the cost per gallon that we're looking at from the 2013 era?
The senior senator.
And I would answer the gentleman, I believe it's $3.73 a gallon, or is in that range. $3.60 or 70 cents a gallon would be the floor that's been established statewide. Don't hold me to that, but it's in that range.
Senior senator from Chesapeake.
It's on the wholesale price, right?
Will the gentleman yield for another question?
He yields, Senator.
I yield.
Thank you. I'd ask the gentleman, this additional money that's going to be generated by this floor, will that money, as the other money, be required to stay in either Hampton Roads or Northern Virginia where it's being raised?
Yes. Mr. President, I would respond to the gentleman by yes. And in fact, the provisions that establish the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission means that that money can only be used for congestion relieving tunnel, bridge, and road projects and no other use.
I thank the gentleman.
Thank you, Senators. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1456 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 12.
Ayes 26, noes 12. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1470, a bill relating to coal tax credits.
The senator from Russell County, Senator Chafin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill,
the senator has the floor.
This is the coal tax credit bill, and you've heard me speak of it before, and I've made a lot of points with you. The tax credit is back again at this time, and this bill would extend the sunset for the coalfield employment enhancement tax credit from taxable years beginning January 1 of this year through January 1 of 2022. What I can tell you and would like to tell you in my floor speech is what has changed in Southwest Virginia, and what has changed is we're seeing additional coal tonnage being produced. We've seen some new mines being opened. We've seen more infrastructure going back in. Sort of a brightening of the mineral market, if you will. And we're seeing, of course, the prospect of regulatory changes that will not harm the coal industry in the way that the coal industry has previously been harmed. So this bill is important. It continues to be important to Southwest Virginia and important to all of Virginia, important to the railroad, important to the ports, important to people working all the way across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I would urge that you vote in favor of it. And I fervently hope that you vote in favor of it. I think that as a responsible legislators, we need to think about every region of this Commonwealth, and we need to consider all of the people of this Commonwealth. We need to think about the needs of all the people of this Commonwealth. It is a Commonwealth, and certainly I can tell you that I do consider your needs when making votes with regard to regional issues that you have in your region. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1470 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote. Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 25, noes 15.
Ayes 25, noes 15. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1542, a bill relating to enforcement of occupational safety and health laws, civil penalties.
The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, what 1542 does is it raises the fines dealing with OSHA inspections for a one-time serious violation. The fine now, which is $7,000, gets raised to over $12,000, and the repeated violation fine would go from a little over $70,000 to about $124,000. And you may wonder why this, with these fines being at this level of increase, why it only had one vote against it here and passed 98-0 in the House. The reason is that we've been told that if we do not do this, the federal government within a couple of months will take over the OSHA program in Virginia, and the federal government will do the inspections. And the business community did not oppose the bill. They would prefer, I'm sure, to have the inspections done by Virginia rather than have the federal government take it over. And this is why we had to do this. I mean, I'm not happy about having to put this in, but I do not want the federal government to start taking over our OSHA system here in OSHA program here in Virginia. So that's the reason why we have the bill. And I would, move that it be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1542 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 32, no 7. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1586, a bill relating to local and regional libraries, boards not mandatory.
The senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass. Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
So I did not anticipate I'd have the opportunity to speak on this bill on the floor, but we had 3 members, I guess, have a conflict of interest on it. The bill provides that a managing library board is not necessary for localities that have libraries when they also have a charter. So what that means is James City County, Roanoke County, and Chesterfield will not have to have managing boards for their libraries. James City is already included and already has such an exemption. I don't think Chesterfield actually is relevant to this situation at all. So what this means is Roanoke County can continue functioning with its library system that it's had since 1980 without a managing board. And I'm now ready for the onslaught of questions on this very controversial bill.
They look to be limited, Senator, so thank you. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1586 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bill passes.
Mr. President.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side of Senate Bill 1542, wherein the bill passed, I now move its reconsideration.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 1542 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senior senator.
Mr. President, having explained it before, I would move its passage.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1542 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 28, noes 11.
Ayes 28, noes 11. The bill passes.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on second reading.
Mr. President.
The senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side that we passed Senate Bill 1431, I'd ask we reconsider that vote. Page 9.
Did you say Senate Bill 1431? Yes, thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 1431 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record the votes aye. Those opposed, are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? If any senators desire to change their votes, the clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having previously explained the bill, I move the bill's passage.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1431 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, are the senators ready to vote? Have all, have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The bill passes.
Uncontested calendar. Senate bills on second reading.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Good evening, Mr. President. I would respectfully move that all the Senate bills on the second reading on the uncontested calendar, which would include all bills on pages 11 through 24, including Senate Bill 800 through Senate Bill 1591, be, it advanced to the engrossment in the third reading in the block after the adoption of any amendments. Any senator who desires to remove a bill from the block should please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar, pages 11 through 24, Senate Bill 800 through Senate Bill 1591, be engrossed and advanced to their third reading in the block after the adoption of the amendments thereto, that any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to.
Senate Bill 800. The committee substitute was adopted by the Senate. Senate Bill 838, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services.
The senator from Southern Fairfax County.
Yes, could Senate Bill 800 come out of the block and by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 800 will come out of the block and by for the day.
Senate Bill 838, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance with a substitute.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the recommendation that we reject the committee substitute, the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services substitute, I now move that we adopt the substitute.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. The senator from Franklin County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that we adopt the substitute from the Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections. Senate Bill 932, reported from the Committee on Local Government with a substitute.
The senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 963, reported from the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 975, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with an amendment, and from the Committee on Finance.
The senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 1005, reported from the Committee on Finance with a substitute.
The senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1018, reported from the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 1034, reported from the Committee on Finance with an amendment.
The senator from Northern Fairfax County, Senator Howe.
I move the amendment be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1063, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance with a substitute.
The senior senator from Bath County, Senator Deeds.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that with the recommendation that it be rejected, I move that the substitute from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services be adopted.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, with the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. The senator from Bath County.
Mr. President, I move adoption of the substitute from the Committee on Finance.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1086, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance.
The junior senator from Loudoun, Senator Wexton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1154, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute, and reported from the Committee on Finance.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
Question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1285, reported from the Committee on Education and Health, reported from the Committee on Finance with amendments.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenchain.
Mr. President, I move the committee amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 1286, reported from the Committee on Finance with a substitute.
The senator from Rockingham.
Mr. President, I would ask that the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1287, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance with amendments.
The senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, I move that the substitute from the Committee on Rehabilitation be accepted.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Hanover.
Mr. President, and I move that the amendments from the Committee on Finance be accepted.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 1328, reported from the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 1361, reported from the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 1412, reported from the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 1527, reported from the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 1552, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with an amendment.
The senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that the committee amendment be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1553, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 1558, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 1559, reported from the Committee on Local Government with amendments.
The senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendments.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Reported from the Committee on Finance with amendments. Senate Bill 1576.
The senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 1580, reported from the Committee on Local Government. Senate Bill 1591, reported from the Committee on Finance with amendment.
The senator from Grayson County, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the committee amendment.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to. The question is, shall the Senate bills be engrossed in advance to their third reading? All bills except for 800 on page 11. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills are engrossed in advance to their third reading. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, it would be my intention to move these bills that were previously on the second reading on the uncontested calendar all the way through to their final passage, subject to the one exception rule. Mr. President, I respectfully move that all the Senate bills now on the third reading on the uncontested calendar, including all bills on pages 11 through 24, including Senate Bill 838 through Senate Bill 1591, that the rules of the Senate be suspended and that the third constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the third reading of the titles of the bills be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. The bills are now before the Senate on final passage. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I would now move that all of the Senate bills on the third reading on the uncontested calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 11 through 24, including Senate Bill 838 through Senate Bill 1591, be placed on their final passage in the block. Any senator who desires to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills now on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 11 through 24, Senate Bill 838 through Senate Bill 1591, be placed upon their final passage in the block, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will please read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 838, Senate Bill 845, Senate Bill 932, Senate Bill 963, Senate Bill 975, Senate Bill 1005, Senate Bill 1018, Senate Bill 1034, Senate Bill 1063, Senate Bill 1086, Senate Bill 1154, Senate Bill 1285, Senate Bill 1286, Senate Bill 1287, Senate Bill 1328, Senate Bill 1361, Senate Bill 1412, Senate Bill 1527, Senate Bill 1552, Senate Bill 1553, Senate Bill 1558, Senate Bill 1559, Senate Bill 1576, Senate Bill 1580, Senate Bill 1591.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The question is, shall the bills in the block pass? That is, all bills except for 800 on page 11. All in favor of the passage of the bills will record their votes aye. Those opposed, nor are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on second reading. Senate Bill 1021, a bill relating to failure to obey highway signs when drivers sleeping or resting, prepayable offense. Reported for the Committee on Transportation, and there is a floor sub.
The senator from Southern Fairfax County, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the floor substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. The senator from Southern Fairfax County.
Mr. President, the members of the Senate, the floor substitute makes only a fairly minor change or two to the bill as it was proposed. It addresses an issue that was raised when this was heard before the Transportation Committee. It's a bill dealing with particularly with truckers, but also with anyone else who's somewhere along the roadway is tired. In the instance, truckers often they've reached the number of hours that they can drive within a period of time. They need to pull over and stop, but there's no easy place to do so, so they get as far off the road. In some cases, they go to a rest area, but the rest area is full with other trucks, and they sort of spill out on it a little bit. Right now, there's already a provision that they can be adjudicated under a separate section for failure to obey a highway sign while the driver is sleeping or resting, but it's very difficult to access. What this would do is make sure that they could be charged under either that or the general standard there.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is agreed to. The senator from Southern Fairfax County.
Mr. President, I move that we engross it and advance it to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, should the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1530, a bill relating to the Secretary of Administration, policy of the Commonwealth regarding state employment of and contracting with individuals with disabilities. Reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with amendments.
The senator from Fauquier County, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the amendments be agreed to.
Question is, shall the amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are agreed to. The senator from Fauquier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. Speaking of that,
engross and advance.
I'm sorry. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 795, a bill relating to a register of funds expended, required posting by localities and school divisions.
Mr. President.
The senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
I'm sorry. With my apologies to the patrons, I ask that that bill go by for the day.
Without objection, Senate Bill 795 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 821, a bill relating to voter registration by political party affiliation primary elections, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections.
The senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be engrossed and pass to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 846, a bill relating to the Virginia Interim Redistricting Commission criteria for remedial redistricting plans, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections.
The senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1051, a bill relating to student loans, licensing of student loan services, Office of the Student Loan Ombudsman, civil penalties, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendments, and from the Committee on Finance with a substitute.
The senator from Northern Fairfax County, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the recommendation that they be rejected, I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that they be rejected, the question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The committee amendments are rejected. The senator from Northern Fairfax County.
Mr. President, I move that the Committee on Finance substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute on finance be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Northern Fairfax County.
Thank you again. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1149, a bill relating to Virginia Initiative for Employment Not Welfare Transitional Support Services time limit, reported from the Committee on Finance.
The senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1239, a bill relating to child day programs, exemptions from licensure, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance.
The senator from Augusta County, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Augusta.
Mr. President, I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1243, a bill relating to parental choice education savings accounts, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance with an amendment.
The senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. The senator from Henrico.
Mr. President, I move the committee amendment be accepted.
The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The senator from Henrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we engross and advance to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1253, relating to voter identification photographs contained in electronic poll book challenge to voter, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance.
The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I would ask that the committee substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Rockingham.
Mr. President, I'd ask that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1262, a bill relating to sanctuary policies, reported from the Committee on Local Government with amendments.
The senior senator from Loudoun County, Senator Black.
Mr. President, I move that the amendments be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are agreed to. The senior senator.
I now move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1373, a bill relating to group homes, reported from the Committee on Local Government with amendments.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, the bill was amended in the Committee for Local Government, and that amendment needs to be tweaked a little bit, so I'm respectfully moving that the bill be re-referred to the Committee on Local Government.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be re-referred to local government? Recommit it to the Committee on Local Government. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is recommitted to local government.
Senate Bill 1391, a bill relating to alcoholic beverage control, new license for certain commercial lifestyle centers, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute, and from the Committee on Finance.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeSteffe.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute.
The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The junior senator.
Mr. President, I move to engross the bill and move it to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1416, a bill relating to the Investment of Public Funds Act, investment of funds in the Virginia Investment Pool Trust Fund, reported from the Committee on Committee on Finance with a substitute, and there is a floor substitute.
The senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I would move the floor substitute from Finance and ask that we reject that.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The noes have it. The substitute is rejected. The senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I'd move that we waive the reading of the floor substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, the floor substitute cleans up two items. One, it tries to make it very clear that this is not special legislation, just as VRS legislation would not be special legislation. And it also, on line 21, makes sure that other individuals or treasurers group that would like to set up a fund, as long as they meet the extraordinarily high requirements that are in the code, can also do this, and they also have to have a minimum value. So I would hope that we would support the floor substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is agreed to. The senator from Bedford.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1569, a bill relating to water and sewer fees calculation factors, reported from the Committee on Local Government with amendments.
The senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendments.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are agreed to. The senator from Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move to engross and advance the bill to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1571, a bill to amend a bill relating to special elections, provisional ballots, determination of results, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections.
The senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake.
Mr. President, I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1581, a bill relating to voter registration verification of Social Security numbers, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections.
The senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake.
Mr. President, I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1585, a bill relating to form a ballot party identification of candidates, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections.
The senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that we engross and advance the bill to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I respectfully move that all the Senate bills on the first reading on both the uncontested and regular calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 32 through 46, Mr. President, including Senate Bill 829 through Senate Bill 1578, that the rules of the Senate be suspended and that the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 32 through 46, Senate Bill 829 through Senate Bill 1578, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now move that all the bills be passed by for the day, sir.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day.
Regular calendar, Senate joint resolutions on second reading. Senate Joint Resolution 223, proposing amendments to Section 1 of Article 2 and Section 12 of Article 5 of the Constitution of Virginia relating to qualifications of voters and executive clemency. Reported for the Committee on Privileges and Elections with a substitute, and there is a floor substitute.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. With a recommendation that we reject the committee substitute from the Committee on Privileges and Elections, I would move the same.
Thank you, Senator. With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Excuse me, the noes have it. The committee substitute is rejected. The senator from James City County.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. The floor amendment has been distributed on the senator's desk, and I would respectfully ask that we waive the reading of the floor amendment.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. The senator from James City County.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would now move that the floor amendment in the nature of a substitute be agreed to, and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the body, particularly those of you who sit on the Privileges and Elections Committee, unfortunately we had a little confusion with this bill in committee, and fortunately the senator from Northern Chesapeake was kind enough to bring it to my attention. It was originally my impression that the language embodied in this floor amendment and the nature of the substitute was what was reported out of the committee. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The amendment in the nature of a substitute that is before you is very similar to a bill that was introduced back in 2013 regarding the restoration of voting rights to convicted felons. Probably the easiest way to understand this bill would be for those of you who are interested to look on page 3 with lines 54 through 58. And what that provides is that nonviolent felons are entitled to have their civil liberties restored by the governor automatically, with the exception of any of those who may have been convicted of election fraud. So that still vests that automatic authority with the governor of Virginia. That is nonviolent felons. Dealing with violent felons, that language is on page 2, which is starting with line 46. And what it states is that the governor retains the authority to restore the civil liberties of a violent felon once certain terms and conditions are met. And those terms and conditions that are laid out in there are the payment of fines and restitution, that he's completed the sentence, whether it's been parole or probation, and that 5 years have elapsed and he has not received any further felony convictions or any misdemeanor convictions involving moral turpitude. And that's one of those terms that lawyers insist on using, which means basically lying, cheating, or stealing. So the governor would have the right to automatically restore nonviolent felons unless there was voter fraud. The governor would have the right to restore violent felons based upon those conditions. So with that explanation, I renew my motion that the amendment in the nature of a substitute be adopted, sir.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
The senator has
On the amendment. In order for it to do that, we got to go back in order to speak on the floor amendment. So I want y'all to listen very carefully. The bill got out of the committee because I voted for it. Because I truly believe that nonviolence is different from a violent crime. I truly believe that you can't put the two together. And our concern is that we may not have another term from McCullough become a governor to blanket everybody. So I said, well, at least I'd rather have a half a loaf than a no loaf. And the original bill, Mr. President, states on nonviolent now, a person who has been convicted of a nonviolent felony and defined by the General Assembly shall have his civil rights restored upon his completion of his sentence of payments and fees assessed against him on the following convention. Stop right there. And I said, that's great. Then there was some concern about the portion about the governor's part, and the senator addressed that. So I said, hey, I got that. And you don't know, in my office, I have called everything but the child of God. People come into my office and raise sand, and I said, I don't drink tea for the fever. I can stand the pressure because I believe in helping everybody. I got a text that I've been eating a lot on social media. And I said, I can take the pressure. I don't care about that. I'm concerned about helping everybody because this is what I truly believe. And I said, and I'm going to stand by it. And I asked my caucus, I said, y'all chill. Don't say a word to me about this. They did that because I believe in the system. I believe in that, Mr. President, because when I was young, going up in Broadline Project, and we would get in trouble that committed a felony. And we were poor, and we had a non-appointed lawyer, and we would go to court, and they would say, well, just plead guilty, and you can carry him home. And it's a felony. I don't know. So we get a court-appointed lawyer, and it was a felony, and you go to court, you plead guilty, and you go home. And now, 20 or 30 years later, some of these same guys who did that had the rights restored by the governor, and they got a record. So I said, well, this is right because you can't compare. So they are calling me all kind of names. I even call a Republican. Can you believe that? And I said, no, if you're going to call me that, call me Republican, not a Republican. So then I said, listen, this thing is for everybody. The Senators are going to fix the part about allowing the governor to do some of his rights. My concern with this part, nonviolent. And this is what it says on what was approved. Now, this is out of the way. So he fixed that. Then the substitute. The substitute came yesterday, but the substitute had the same original bill that he had fixed for me on the substitute. All right, now we got the substitute. Now we are getting to the floor amendment. This substitute, Mr. Chairman, that was not agreed, that was not brought to my attention by the senator and anybody else, it says now about election fraud. I said, hold on, wait a minute. That was not on this. That's why I voted for it, because it was guaranteed that everybody, if it was nonviolent, by the General Assembly, violent by the governor, everybody will have the right by someone to say yeah or nay. Now, this come up, this was not in here. This was what I had not agreed to it. Had I known that, I would have voted for that. So I look at it, then I asked my lawyer, Jennifer, I said, explain to me what this means. I said, explain it to me. So I'm figuring on that, how can we take a constitutional change and fix it on the floor? My chief of staff said, why are you rushing it? Republicans are in control anyway. this year and next year. So why are you fixing a constitutional change on the floor? Why not all the folks have a say in that? And I'm saying to the senator, my agreement, and I thought, and if I'm wrong, I would apologize to him. My thought was that everybody, whether it be the governor or the General Assembly, that everybody will have some avenue of having their rights restored. Now, this floor amendment does not do that on election fraud. Now, I can understand that how is it that a person who can kill someone, rape someone, will have an avenue to have the rights restored by the governor or anybody, but yet in election fraud cannot ever have the rights restored. It bothers me. I don't understand that. So now, here I am. Because I believe, and if I can tell you, if I get my word, I don't change it. And to Senator Norman, those who have called me and gave me, and some of them, I put my Bible down, I can have them every day. I say, son. You know what I said? I said, don't do that to me. I said, because I don't change my vote unless I see something's wrong. And one gentleman called me and said, Senator Spruill, you told me that everybody will have their rights restored, maybe one way or the other, whether it's through the General Assembly or whether it's through the governor. I said, that's right. Then why is election fraud taken out? I said, that was not presented to me. I did not know about it. Had I not known about it, I would not have agreed to it. So I'm asking the senator from James City, there is a constitutional change. I'm asking all of you, don't rush through it. Let's make it right, because I owe it to everybody, those who came to us at the hearing, who spoke, Mr. President, I owe it to them that they should come back and to allow the senator who was not there at the substitute meeting, he owed it to them, he owed it to me, because I was the one that stood up for his bill that got it out of there, to let those folks to explain why he did not say that election fraud does not have the rights in any circumstances. And so I think it's wrong, and I'm asking my friend from James City to please reconsider and to let's not do it on the floor. Let's bring it back and do it right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Would the gentleman from senator from James City County yield for a question?
Would the senator yield?
Yes, sir. I just would remind everyone that we're not voting on the passage of the bill, but the adoption or the rejection of an amendment.
He yields, Senator.
While we've got the amendment in front of us, I did want to ask a question or two. One is this amendment, if I read it right, is further restricting the authority of the governor to restore rights than he has now. That's correct, right?
The senator from James City County.
Mr. President, I would respond that under the existing provisions, it has always been subject to the actions of the General Assembly. I don't think there's ever been an affirmative action to set out any criteria. This does set out criteria.
The senator from Alexandria.
Would the gentleman yield for another question?
Senator, yield for an additional question.
Yes, sir. I'd be happy
yield,
to.
Senator.
Where in the code is violent felony defined?
The senator from James City County.
Mr. President, I really haven't looked to see whether or not it is defined, but I think that the General Assembly always retains the ability to define those criminal offenses that constitute violent felonies.
The senator from Alexandria.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman. I'll wait to speak further till tomorrow.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, speaking against the floor substitute, although the original bill apparently that was passed out by the committee was an error, as I understand it, just a complete mistake. And I think we ought to send it back to committee. But before making that motion, I'd like to speak to this floor amendment the way it is. assuming this was the one that was supposed to have come out of committee. First of all, any constitutional amendment should be looked upon very, very carefully. We don't amend the Constitution in a haphazard manner or just because we're mad at the governor or just for some arbitrary reason. We should be very, very careful about any amendment to the Constitution because the Constitution, once it's amended, it's hard to unamend. You know, it's one of those things that will stay for a long, long time. And we're subject to it. The Constitution comes first, and the laws we pass here have to meet constitutional standards, but they can be changed from year to year, unlike a constitutional amendment. And I think there's no compelling reason whatsoever to change the Constitution. I know certain bodies have been upset at the governor for taking certain action last year with regard to restoration of rights. The Supreme Court has ruled. That's the current constitutional interpretation now. I think it's time to move on. So whatever pique certain people had about the governor and angry at the governor for what he did last year should be gone. It's over. Let's move on. Let's not continue a fight that unnecessarily. So I'm against any kind of constitutional amendment at this point, Mr. President, although I had one that simply said leave the governor's authority. My proposed resolution was to leave the governor's authority intact and let the General Assembly add to it, if it wishes, to restore rights on an automatic basis by general law. That apparently was not looked upon very favorably by the committee. The problem with this particular substitute, Mr. President, is multiple. First of all, by saying that the governor is stuck with whatever the General Assembly prescribes by law with regard to restoration of rights, assumes that we can foresee the future. The whole idea of clemency, going back to the Norman invasion of 1066, even before that, there's always been the king, the chief executive, has always had clemency powers because of the need to have a release valve with regard to exceptional circumstances. And the governor, the king, the president, whatever the chief executive is, should have powers to deal with circumstances that come up that may be unforeseen, to deal with clemency of various sorts. But what we're doing here is saying, no, the governor's stuck with whatever the General Assembly says. He can go not beyond that. I think that's a huge, huge mistake, and it's a major departure from the history of our country. And going back, as I say, to Anglo-Saxon, British law, Anglo-American law, going way back to the beginning of before, as Chip Woodrum used to say, the memory of man runneth not to the contrary. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we cannot foresee what may need to require clemency in the future. The second thing is the issue that was just raised, what is a violent felony? Well, I looked up the matter over the weekend, and the fact is we do not classify laws, felonies and misdemeanors as violent or nonviolent in the provisions of the code where we classify felonies, first degree, second degree, and so forth and so on. However, if you look at the sentencing, the provision in the Code of Virginia dealing with the Sentencing Commission, it does classify of certain crimes as violent for purposes of the Virginia Sentencing Commission and coming up with sentencing guidelines. And that's not the same thing as making a distinction between felonies that are violent and felonies that are not violent for purposes of clemency. This is strictly for the sentencing guidelines. That's all. And some of the distinctions between what is a violent felony and a nonviolent felony are not necessarily logical. I'll give you an example. Burglary, by definition, is a violent offense. It's a violent offense because it's at night and because of the potential of somebody being in the house who could be injured. So that's why burglary is, by definition, a violent offense. But you can commit burglary with nobody in the house. So your 18-year-old son could go up the street with his friends and break into some friend's house. Nobody's there. Nobody gets injured. He could be convicted of burglary and be stuck under this category of having a violent offense. And at least with the bill that came out of the committee, never, ever get his rights back to vote. Just because he went into a house at night without authority. Nobody was there. Nobody got hurt. But he's convicted of burglary, a violent offense. And you can have to go through each one. Some drug offenses are violent and some aren't. So it's an arbitrary distinction that was not made for purposes of the governor's clemency, but rather was made for purposes of the Sentencing Commission coming up with the sentencing guidelines. The question of election fraud. The question of election, I'll yield later, not now. With regard, what is election fraud? I'm not sure that's been defined in the code. I haven't looked it up, but I don't think election fraud has been defined. So there are multiple problems with this, Mr. President, and I would like to make a substitute motion. We send this back to the committee.
The senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Would the gentleman respond to a question, please?
Which gentleman, sir? The senator from Roanoke City.
Well, thank you for calling me a gentleman. I'll be happy to respond.
He yields, Senator
Loudon. Thank you. You referenced a situation with a burglary, some kids who go down and break into a house, and indicated that that would somehow be a permanent bar to restoration of rights. But as I read this, it says that the governor may remove political disabilities of a person convicted of a violent felony upon application.
Well, let me say, I referred to the original bill that came out. This is different. Yeah.
I understand that. Okay, so you were not referring to the floor.
The original bill that came out made it permanent. This just has, it can be, the governor can provide the restoration of rights under a bunch of conditions.
I thought we were dealing with the floor amendment.
Well, we are, but I mentioned, when I said the original bill said it's permanent. This provides for clemency under restricted conditions.
If I could just comment that as to the floor amendment, which I think is at issue, the individual who commits a burglary, and understandably, I think the gentleman set forth a reasonable hypothesis. That individual, once he's completed his sentence and any probation and so forth and paid necessary restitution, would be eligible for restoration of his rights under the floor amendment. And I guess we need to sort out whether we're talking about the floor amendment or whether we're talking about the something else. I'm not quite clear on where we are right now, Mr. President.
We'll get that sorted out in just a second, Senator. The senator from Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman from James City County rise for a question?
Would the senator from James City County yield?
I'd be happy to, sir.
He yields, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, wouldn't this bill now, lines 54 through 57, encompass the what was originally in the original bill from, I think it's 23 to 26, the concerns of most that had about paying restitution, the provisions of probation, parole, all those sort of things. So this is an automatic renewal of their abilities to take part in the political process and restoration of their rights now in accordance with what the original bill was?
The senator from James City County.
My abbreviated response would be yes, and when given the opportunity, I will reorient us where we are on it, but that is the short answer. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd yield to the senator from James City County.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I rise to resist the motion to recommit the bill on it. And let me point out a couple of things. And I would say, first of all, it would be my intention when the floor amendment in the nature of substitute is adopted to not engross it and advance it, and to make the appropriate amendment on the election fraud to remove that. Regretfully, this bill has experienced some confusion, little of which I have contributed to, but it is my bill, and so I accept the accountability for it, and I would like to get it right, and so that would be my thought. I listened with extraordinary interest to the senator from Roanoke, and I must confess I cannot resist the temptation to share some information with the body. In 2013, the senator from Portsmouth introduced a very similar bill dealing with the restoration of rights on it, and it provided for the automatic restoration of nonviolence and some criteria, including the payment of fines, costs, and restitution for violent felonies. And even though it has been suggested that that is not a defined term, in 2013, on line 46, it used the term violent felony. On line 20, it used violent felony, which at that time had not been defined. And it amazes me in the legislative process how even our thinking either evolves or it devolves sometimes depending upon the political atmosphere. And I know it's inappropriate to do what I am about to do in the form that I am, but I would like to remind my colleagues that the following of you voted for this bill on the automatic restoration of rights of nonviolent felons, which was not defined, and the gubernatorial restoration of rights for violent felonies, which was not defined based upon criteria. And it included Senators Alexander, Barker, Colin, Deeds, Eben, Edwards, Favola, Attorney General Herring, Howell, Locke, Lucas, Marston, Marsh, McEachin, Miller, and Mr. President, you, sir. Mr. President, now I know how you got elected lieutenant governor. Peterson, Puckett, Puller, Saslaw, all of you have voted for the substance of this bill, and now it has taken on a fever, which is remarkable to me. So I would respectfully ask that we resist recommitting it to the committee, and as a matter of fact, I would move the previous question.
Mr. President?
Non-debatable.
Senator, the previous question has been called. The primary motion was to approve the substitute. The substitute motion is to recommit to P&E. The question is, shall the previous question be ordered? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 13.
Ayes 26, noes 13. The previous question has been ordered. The question is, shall the floor substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The chair is uncertain. We'll have a recorded vote. All in favor of agreeing to the floor substitute will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. The floor substitute is agreed to. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you. In a good faith movement to my friend from the senator from Chesapeake, I would now ask the bill be passed by for the day.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, SJR 223 will go by for the day.
Senate Joint Resolution 231, proposing an amendment to Section 6 of Article 2 of the Constitution of Virginia relating to apportionment, Virginia Redistricting Commission, criteria for legislative and congressional districts. Reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with a substitute.
The senator from Augusta County, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask that that bill go by for the day before we adopt the substitute.
Without objection, SJR 231 will go by for the day.
Senate Joint Resolution 290, proposing an amendment to Section 6 of Article 2 of the Constitution of Virginia relating to apportionment criteria for electoral districts. Reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections.
The senator from Northern Fairfax County, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolution is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Joint Resolution 295, proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Virginia by adding in Article 4 a section numbered 19 related to legislative review of administrative rules, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with a substitute.
The senator from Fauquier County, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. The senator from Fauquier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolution is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Joint Resolution 331, proposing an amendment to Section 6 of Article 10 of the Constitution of Virginia relating to property tax exemption for flooding, remediation, abatement, and resiliency. Reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections.
The senator from Accomack County, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, I move that the resolution be engrossed and advanced on to its third reading.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolution is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Supplemental calendar number 1 for Friday, February the 3rd, 2017. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
My enlightened Mr. President, I would respectfully move that all the Senate bills on the supplemental calendar, number 1 on the first reading, which would include all bills on pages 1 through 14, including Senate Bill 840 through Senate Bill 1490, that the rules of the Senate be suspended and that the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 1 through 14, Senate Bill 840 through Senate Bill 1490, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, no 0, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 38, no 0, Rule 36-1. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. The senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I would now ask that all the bills be passed by for the day, sir.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day.
Uncontested calendar, Senate joint resolutions on first reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I would now respectfully move that all of the Senate joint resolutions on the first reading on the on the uncontested calendar, that the rules of the Senate be suspended, and that would include all Senate joint resolutions on pages 15 through 17, including Senate Joint Resolution 251 through Senate Joint Resolution 300.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of the Senate joint resolutions on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 15 through 17, SJR 251 through SJR 300, be waived? All in favor will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their votes? The clerk will close the roll. Ayes 39, no 0. The motion is agreed to. The senator from James City County.
Mr. President, I would now move that all the resolutions be passed by for the day, sir.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate joint resolutions on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading go by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolutions will go by for the day.
Uncontested calendar, Senate resolution on first reading. Senate Resolution 105, confirming a nomination to the Senate Ethics Advisory Panel.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The senator from James City County.
Mr. President, inquiry of the clerk, does that mercifully conclude the calendar?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come before the Senate?
Mr. President.
The senator from Fauquier County, Senator Vogel.
I rise for purposes of a very brief announcement.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, today is Wear Red Day. If you've been looking around, you see it's a gentle ladies of the Senate are wearing red, and there may have been some in the gallery who perhaps died of boredom who were wearing red. I just want to be very brief but make a very important announcement, and that is each year 1 in 3 women die of heart disease and stroke. But we can change that. Today is National Wear Red Day, as I just mentioned, and the American Heart Association's movement to end heart disease and stroke in women because it's not just a man's disease. By increasing awareness, speaking up about heart disease, and empowering women to reduce their risk for cardiovascular disease, we can save thousands of lives each year. An estimated 44 million women in the U.S. are affected by cardiovascular diseases. 90% of women have 1 or more risk factors for developing heart disease. Yet only 1 in 5 women believe that heart disease is her greatest health threat. By increasing awareness, speaking up about heart disease, and empowering women to reduce their risk for cardiovascular disease, we can save thousands of lives each year. So thank all of you for joining me in wearing red for all of the women in your life. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The clerk will please report any announcements on the desk.
Today, Friday, February 3rd, the Committee on General Laws and Technology will meet 5 minutes after adjournment in Senate Room A. This is a change. 5 minutes after adjournment in Senate Room A. Sunday, February the 5th, the Committee on Finance will meet at 3 p.m. in Senate Room B to report the budget, Senate Bill 900. This is a time change. Finance, 3 p.m. on Sunday. Monday, February 6th, the Committee for Courts of Justice will meet at 8 a.m. Senate Room B. The Republican caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in Senate Room 2. The Democratic caucus will meet 1/2 hour before session in Senate Room 1. Weekend weather report. There is a slight chance of snow showers in the southeast this morning. Saturday will be dry with temperatures low in the 30s throughout the Commonwealth. Sunday will bring a chance of wintry precipitation in the southwest and a rain-snow mixture in the central and southeast portions of the state. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, first I rise for an announcement.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I'd like to announce that 15 minutes after session, the Education Committee of Finance will meet on the 10th floor, including Senator Howe, Senator Saslaw, Senator Norman, Senator Hanger, Senator Ruff, and Senator Donovan. Mr. President, I now move that the Senate do now adjourn until 11 a.m. on Monday.
Thank you, Senator. The motion is that the Senate stand adjourned until 11 a.m. Monday. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned until 11 a.m. Monday.